All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of Leverage Lane here on the Ship It Nation YouTube station, PGA DFS edition, where we teach you how to play, not who to play. Going to be breaking it down from a single entry GPP perspective. Got my man Alex Blickle here with me as always, and I'll quickly address the elephant in the room. New year, new me. I do appreciate all the birthday wishes in the chat, but if I'm going to be a year older, I want to feel 10 years younger. So the mustache bit is over. We've ended it. We've called it quits. Scotty got the W last week. Alex, my man, what's going on? How you doing, my friend?
Doing very well. We've got just a phenomenal tournament this week. I think we probably agree that, like, if last week wasn't the second week of the season where we're still just so hyped to have PGA back, we're probably not super into that tournament. This one's just really good all around the boards. Phenomenal golf course, phenomenal field. Really excited to dive in.
I love this event. It's actually just a quick story time. This is the first ever big PGA win I ever had. We'll date it really far back. Robert Garrigus was in the lineup, and it was a South Course, North Course lineup. I built a 6-0 South first. North, everyone was telling me you had to start on the North, and the mindset of golfers they know so well. Like, you're a golfer yourself, as you know. We talked about this in the past. I said, no. Get the hard shit out of the way first. Then you'll feel real good going into the North Course, score low, just make the cut, and then whatever happens, happens. And it was back in the day, it was a $3.20 max. The contests have changed a little bit, but it was a $3 or $4.20 max, I think. And it ended up being $40K for second place. So first ever huge score in the PGA DFS streets was at this event, but excited about this one. So yeah, no, the bit just ended, Tim. The bit just ended. We had it long. I got third in the Millie Maker. I tried to prove these people wrong. I had my second best, I should say, best in a while, but second best NFL DFS season ever. And we still got the Super Bowl. Anything can happen, but the Super Bowl is like $3K in entries, max it, try and win this insane big tournament. Whatever happens, happens. If I ship that, great. If I don't think the mustache plays a factor. You guys know I don't believe in jinxes, mushes, none of that shit. I don't care about any of it. So Alex, let's talk about last week a little bit first. We recap it. Obviously, as people know, we are going to be talking about farmers, but this show is meant to be sort of learn and go, edutainment, if you will. We're trying to bring some education with some entertainment, bring it towards this week. But we do got to talk about last week. A couple things. One off the top was the Scotty win, but some of those guys not coming with him. And then like round 4 showdown where he won, but still wasn't even close to being needed. And then I also think there was some stuff with ownership, like Rico Hoey. I thought he was going to be 20%. Nope, that was Ryan Gerard. And so little things like that. Where do you want to start, my friend? Just quickly recap last week.
Yeah, it was a pretty solid week for me. I missed out on main slate again, but second week in a row, I had a really good showdown day. This time it was round 4. Last week it was round 3, and yeah, it was really interesting because I didn't have Scotty in that round 4 showdown. Got I think it was 5th place, $2,500, and I had the 4% Jason Day explosion. And I also had the Wyndham Clark, who really did nothing at all. And so, if Wyndham had played well, I'm right there. No one above me had Wyndham. So I really had a chance. And I think the key is I might have been able to fit Day with a Scotty lineup. Like maybe there was a way to do that salary-wise. But I wouldn't have had Day because Day wasn't like someone that I had this major conviction on. And I was always going to play Jason Day no matter what. Day was just one of many guys that I really liked in that price range that I could get because I didn't have Scotty. So I had Fowler, I had Henley, I had Day. It was like any of these guys can be the really low and separator for me today. It happened to end up being Jason Day, but I only had that many chances for a separator of that magnitude because I wasn't using Scotty. And I think the point is we're finally maybe getting to a point where, particularly in showdowns, Scotty is priced so well that like he absolutely has to get first place. He has to win. He has to be the high score of the day to really be necessary, just because he takes so much away from what you can do in the rest of your lineup. And having the chance to have separators who are actually good golfers and not very bottom of the price pool. You need them to have like an absolute career day to be great for you type of performance. So that was a big takeaway for me. And I think that does extend to the main slate at least a little bit, but certainly not as much as it does to showdowns.
Yeah, I want to add to that because I mean, this is not going to be any victory lap. I can promise you that. I had 60% Scotty last week and still lost. So it's like, it doesn't matter about just getting Scotty, and that's part of it. But I will say, like, to even this point, so he moonwalked further than I even expected. 27% in the flagship. Obviously different single entries, things like that we're going to talk about here, different, but and that's the main focus, and that was what we were talking about. I know a ton of people reached out to me directly in the Discords, things like that in the open, talking about our math examples, and they loved how we sort of went through that. You really went through it and were able to break it down. They loved that you had it ready in real time to go on, like, okay, if this, then that. Funny enough, the guy we mixed into the second round was Siwoo, who obviously not a great Sunday, but he was another guy that was right up there. But the second part of this statement from my man Newens is so correct. Early in the, I know 2 weeks in, I get it, but especially when football is going on, and touts, whatever you want to, I mean, it doesn't really matter, whatever you call them. But my point is, anybody talking about DFS, it's obviously very niche in the space. When you have, I call them lazy weeks. I don't think last week was lazy at all. I think more people are digging in than ever now, but I'm saying more of, if someone says one thing, like Gerard was really hyped up in a lot of places last week, and clearly for good reason. They were correct. He came through and had himself a, what was it, T2 with everybody else that was there. So he got the love. Hoey did not, right? And if you listened, a lot of people were saying like, Hoey's been good, but if you kind of did good chalk, bad chalk, Hoey would have immediately been thrown into like the pile of like, why are we really playing him when there's dozens of guys around him? There's not that much of a difference between Gerard, but people were backing him. So yeah, early in the season specifically, and then on some of those lazy weeks, the weeks before a major or after a major, sometimes people are playing a little bit more to what people are saying. And that goes both ways. That, you know, that's who should I be on? Well, it can really get amped up in a certain range, like the mid sevens where these guys were. It can also really go against somebody if someone's saying, no, don't do this in this range, because that's where people just say, oh, well, they told me it'd be kind of bullshit to play that guy. I'm just not going to play that guy. And on certain weeks, Alex, it does get amped up a little more than others. And I would say because we were currently in the heart of the AFC conference championships and the NFL conference championships, AFC and NFC both, where you kind of get that setup of people just looking at what others are saying and then playing the game.
Well, also it's important to recognize, like, this is sports specific, and it makes sense because when you start the NFL season, you get a lot of like NFL fans who are trying DFS for the first time. When we get to the start of PGA DFS season, we get a lot of DFS players who are trying PGA DFS for the first time. They're not as familiar with the players, so of course they have to lean on their favorite experts a little bit more and projections a little bit more than they do in NFL, where they're really playing off their own ideas and their own feelings and opinions of players and things of that nature. So one thing I do want to add is, we talked a lot last week about how Scotty ownership would affect ownership everywhere else. We ended up being pretty dialed in on Scotty. We had him at 30% in MME and 29% in single entry. I think he was like 24% in single entry, and I think you said like 27% in the flagship. So I was pretty pleased with where we ended on him, and it did set us up really well elsewhere. It was actually one of our best weeks ever for ownership, except we had one of the biggest misses that I personally have ever had in ownership, which was Rico Hoey, and that obviously was related to Gerard. And so I do want to spend a little bit of time like really kind of talking through what the hell happened with Rico Hoey's ownership, because we had him at, I think, 24% in single entries. I don't even think we were the highest, and he came in at like 8% in $200 single entry. So I have my own personal thought, and by the way, like I want to start by also mentioning he was 34% in the King of the Desert. So it very much wasn't a case of like the industry just didn't think as highly of him as we thought the industry did. There was something else to it. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because then I have some thoughts on my own as well. I
really don't have too many. I think like at the end of the day, it's, back to the previous point that Newens kind of had. I think just in the end, Gerard was what people settled on. And so I think it's more a product of people listening to the positives than going against the negatives. Like I didn't hear a lot of people say, oh, he's a horrible play at 7,700. I heard it some, of course, that gets out in the Discord. I also heard people say Gerard is a horrible play at that ownership or things like that. Like I get it, but I think it's way more a product of Gerard over Hoey. And that's what ended up happening in the end result as well. I think certainly like from some other perspectives is like maybe the types of lineups that were being built. Like, but to the point of Scotty going backwards, Scotty moonwalking some, it's like that could allow for more of those guys to fit in. So why wouldn't people have just played them together? Right. That's part of the thought as well. So I'm not too sure. I know like in the balance builds, that was one of the points I was bringing up all week, even though Hoey was in the Scotty example. It was like, if you were going to a more balanced build, you could still land in that range. And you would have thought it would have been more Hoey, Gerard, and somebody else, maybe Berger, if he could fit, maybe dropping down. Like that might've meant you had to go from Henley to Siwoo. I don't remember exactly, but I just think it was definitely a Gerard greater than Hoey thing for a lot of people. And I think they were being told that, and they went with it. That because if you went to the projections on all the sites, Hoey and Gerard were pretty close, not too far apart at all.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it at the start there, just talking about how like it was very much a product of Gerard being right below him and being like this clear secondary chalk where people saw an opportunity to be more contrarian with a play that they maybe had even more confidence in. And I think the big takeaway for me is we're not going to get this every single week. It's not like we're going to look at every single, field and we're going to be able to say, oh, this guy's projected at 20%. This guy's projected at 15. That's going to flip. I guarantee it. It's not going to be a situation like that. But I do think we should be aware of the fact that people are very much using more game theory and using ownership to make like these more aggressive decisions. They're doing that more now than they have in the past, even like 2 years ago, 3 years ago in PGA DFS. So we want to be aware of that. And then the second thing I'll say here is we talked about conditional ownership a lot on Leverage Lane throughout the NFL season and how we could get, unique combinations of players by going to combos that people didn't really think of. And I think there's also a scenario here where we can do that sort of thing. People viewed Gerard as a direct pivot off of Hoey. One way we know that is Gerard came in almost like the same amount higher than his ownership projections than Hoey came in under. So people really were making this decision of I'm using Gerard instead of Hoey. Very few people said, I'll just use both. And so when we do get these instances where there's a clear chalk and a clear pivot above everybody else, I think we're going to be able to get the combo of the two at like a pretty low combinatorial ownership, which is something we saw last year as well. We've talked about the example from the Scottish Open with Harry Hall, Ryan Fox, and Matt Fitzpatrick before. So yeah, I think that sort of thing is something we should be on the lookout for. Again, we're not just trying to provide analysis for the week at hand. We're trying to do this like evergreen, DFS strategy type thing. And I think this idea of getting low combinatorial ownership on guys when other people are viewing them as an or instead of a possible and is a really good way to approach DFS, especially when they're both projected as well as those two were this past week.
And not a better topic than Scotty at 14K plus than this for evergreen, because guess what? You're going to see it a lot this season. The guy literally came out. He's 1 for 1. You can't win them all if you don't win the first. Well, he got that over and done with. Bennett Scheffler has now seen 12 wins and he's like 2 years old. It's pretty insane stuff. So looking at it from that perspective, I mean, I called this out last week. It ended up being a 4-6. I think it was Justin Rose. And I forget the other guy that let me down. I mean, I'm not the best for remembering that stuff. I have a good thought process going in, but I don't have it right in front of me. But I do have some of the other stuff. But, Gerard at 19, sure. But Day fits Scotty. Remember, Scotty and 5 under 10%. Well, people don't, you nailed the point there. Oh, I'm going to move off Hoey and go to Gerard. Yeah, you just hopped onto the train that's about to be 10% higher owned somewhere else. It's like you can remove that range. And you say, well, how would you know? Well, you talked about it last week, something that you like that I do, and I talk about it all the time in football and in golf, of the people that the names or the picks and plays, quote unquote, the people are talking about, but not clicking, and they are clicking it. That's where people get this confused. What I mean is, though, is like there's no way Jason Day was getting to 10%. So if you were landing in the low 8Ks instead of the upper 7s, he's a great pivot there. Not because of his result. He was 6%. He ended up giving you a good result. But you go down the board a little bit. Sam Stevens. I loved him last week. He was in my lineup as one of those 5 under 10%. He was 4.69%. Thigala played him in my core the week before. Comes back as another good week. 3% at 7,200. Hoagie, you liked him the week before. 3% at 6,500. Bridgman, 6%. Wyndham Clark, 5%. These guys are putting up 120 points almost, and the people are playing them 5%, but no one's committing to them. So you have to kind of think of this. You had a great call last week on Ricky Fowler. Ends up being 6%. Are they talking about him enough, but are they clicking him? No. Hao Tong Lee, everyone liked him the week before. This week came back at 2.6%. percent. So even like the other guys are kind of conditional, got like 7-8% on like the McGreevy's, the McCarty's, the Cooties. They're 7 to 9%. They're not 18 or 20. And I know you say, okay, but you needed Girard at 19. Right. That happened. But you can play. I went with that in single entry in the large, in anything for this matter, but just of note for the evergreen side. If it was Scotty and Girard and then 4 guys under 10%, you're still just fine. I was just committing to something because that's how I wanted to play it, where even a 5 or 6. And the big thing for me, Alex, to finalize this, because you won't get this very often, but it just to finalize last week, in my opinion, is the 3-course guarantee, the 54-hole cut. That's what I kept saying about leverage, heavy leverage. Was my 4 or 6 was right in the mix. If it was a 5 or 6, I cash easily. No problems whatsoever, really. I mean, I could have the same bad day from the one golfer. And again, butterfly effect, I get all that. I'm just noting it of why that mattered to me, because everyone assumes like, well, you got to have 6 or 6 to do anything, especially if it's going to be higher. Not necessarily the way the board shook out, and a 5 or 6 with big leverage. If you have 4 guys in my lineup in the 5 or 6 example, and Scotty's through and going to win, if I have just 4 guys and not 5, but they're all 3 to 5% or whatever they end up landing on, if 2 of those guys have a big day, that can be massive separation because nobody else really has them. And so that's the difference, that people don't quite always see it or think about it. So it's kind of like it's kind of like late swap in NFL in a different way, right? You're down. I'm not going to win. I have a 5 or 6. I'm probably not going to win, but I'm going to, I do this before the tournament starts, but I am swinging for the fences with the low owned plays to allow me in an uncontrollable position to still be able to get my best result. In NFL, you're probably not winning if your 60% on running back busts in the morning, but you're not winning if you stay put. You go and then reach for separation because you're allowed to late swap. In PGA, you can't do that, but you can build it in advance, if you will. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but it's kind of my final 2 cents for last week.
Yeah, I think another good point about last week is that the 6% percentage was low, and that's sort of something that I pay a lot of attention to, and I can very confidently say that over the past 2 years, I've had a decent amount of success in PGA DFS, and almost all of my takedowns or all my sweats have come in weeks where the 6 for 6 percentage was really low. And so if there's a 20% 6 for 6 rate, chances are I'm not in contention. But when there's a 3% 6 for 6 rate or a 4% 6 for 6 rate, I'm going to be in contention in quite a bit. And that has been a strategy that works really well for me. And I think it's a good segue into this week, because we do have a week where I think there are a lot of good opportunities to be contrarian here. We don't have to eat a lot of chalk. There are high probability low-owned plays. So very excited for this week, and hopefully a lot of the chalk fails and we get a really low 6 for 6 percentage here at Torrey Pines.
Yeah, the last point you said finalizes everything, because we did this for football. That's why we continued this series, and we want to keep doing it. And I think people love it because in football, you said the same, and so did I. So guess when our best weeks are? When there's lower scoring. Guess what the lower scoring is caused by? Chalk busting. It's the same thing here. So when people are like, oh, I got to play this chalk piece or I got to play this chalk piece, I prefer oftentimes to not play those chalk pieces or play them in at least a very different way, because it's actually better for me if they bust. And people think, oh yeah, but you only have like 20% of your lineup 6 of 6. Well, that's great when the 6 of 6 is 2%. It's like, that's what I'm hoping for. Like, those are the weeks where you can have those big explosions and make up for all the weeks you're going to lose. Like, people got to get that through their head. If you're winning every week somehow, or min cashing it or whatever, you're probably not playing good, right? Congrats on the min cashes, but you may never find the promised land. So certainly think that's something as well. Where do you want to start here? Because last time, I know we'll have the one and done section, the betting segment, our lane at the end. I do not have a lane as of right now because I want to sort of talk through a few things with you here. I have some thoughts, but it's a fun event. Like you said, this field is strong. I love this course. I love the setup. I think it's good. It's the 2-day course swap, and then the rest over the weekend on the setup. But the setup of that is still for a regular cut event with a very strong field. So do you have anything on the weather first? Maybe start there, and then anything on the course rotation in general, being that it's different than last week. It's north-south, south-north. After that, we're all in one place with the full cut. Anything you want to add to that?
Like last week, very little weather, and maybe even less, because last week we were talking about the possibility that we were going to get heavier winds on Saturday. We're going to have really calm days throughout this week. So nothing in the course rotation for me, but I will say this course fit model this week is one of the most reliable all season. It's one of the most predictive. It's also one of the most extreme. We have a 94% boost on the predictive value of driving distance this week. So you take any skill, you take two guys and say they're half a stroke different in their strokes gained driving distance. Well, this week on this golf course or these golf courses, that half a stroke difference translates into almost a full stroke difference because we're almost at a 100% boost on the predictive value of driving distance. Negative 20% on driving accuracy, about even neutral with approach play, and then a 60% boost on around the green and almost a 10% boost on putting. So really, really kind of clear of what type of player succeeds here. You want distance, you want scoring around the greens. And then honestly, like you also just want a complete player. Every single one of these skill sets is quite predictive here, even if it's negative 20% like accuracy. This still means you have to be accurate. And if you compare that accuracy with distance, now you're really in the driver's seat. So I absolutely love this golf course because of, for one hand, just as a golfer, I just love the design and the difficulty of the course. But I also love it from a DFS perspective because it's one of the most predictive, and it also points us to some like really clear course fit specialists who are going to project a lot better here than they would on most golf courses.
Yeah. You said it was, we're not going to bring it up this week. I think in the spirit of time, we had a good little recap from last week. I think it was strong because that's going to matter for people moving forward. And then somebody asked us too about like doing a review show. That's what I said at the start of the season. Like, I think the review we do on this and then how to apply it moving forward and the ability to go back and rewatch and do these different factors and then taking everything we're talking about for this week and applying it right directly to the slate, to your point, there's just going to be so much more you pick up from that. And the benefit is you can actually go apply it immediately versus a review show is like what happened in the past. And if we're reviewing the Masters, great. Well, Masters going to be in a year. So then we'll see. You don't get to apply any of that necessarily until the following year. So I like how we're doing it this way. Where do you want to start with the chalk build for this week? I know you just talked about a lot of the factors that you think are important and why that can be, historically beneficial, all these factors you mentioned, but what sort of thought process do you have around the ownership this week and what's formulating as the chalk build?
Yeah, I want to get your take on what you expect the field to do with Xander, because I'm seeing signs that the field's going to be very heavy on Xander. And I think there are two reasons for this. Number one, he's very clearly the best option between himself, Cantlay, and Ober, just in terms of like how well he projects. If they have their A games, who's the best of the three, Xander wins pretty clearly. And they're significantly more bunched in price than we often see from the best player in the field, 10-1 to 10-4 to 10-5 with Schauffele. So I'm seeing signs of him being super popular, but I went into the week thinking there was a chance that we were going to see higher ownership on, Cam Young or Siwoo Kim or JJ Spawn or Chris Goddard, and those guys were going to be the highest owned at the top, not Xander. Instead, I am seeing it Xander right now. So I kind of wanted to get your opinion on that, because this to me feels like one that could flip if people say, okay, I can just build a more balanced build and get two guys that I think are almost as good as Schauffele, since Schauffele obviously didn't have anywhere close to his best stuff all of last season.
Yeah, so two things. One, this week is very different from last. Not saying you didn't say that, just noting it for people out there. It's like the difference is now you have a 10-5 golfer and a bunched up 9K, 10K range. It's not like a 14K plus golfer with Scotty last week at whatever, with 14-4, 14 whatever, where you see that and you're like, oh man, or 14-2 it might have been, I can't remember now. But anyway, it's that. And then the other thing is too, it's the range of options. And realistically this week, I just don't see the 6K range popping up for people like it did last week. Do I see Potgieter popping up? Yeah, for a 6K guy. Yeah, I see him getting a little bit of love. Do I see some other guys down there that might get some? Maybe, but I think it looks like as of right now, possibly only Potgieter gets over 5%. And even he's going to end up 5 to 10%. It's not like he's going to be chalk. He's just the chalk of the 0.1% owned guys down there versus him. So that matters too, because now people can just say, all right, I can get different in the sevens, like from, is there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 16, 17, 19, 20, 23 guys between like 72 and 7,500. That alone just gives people the rights to be able to go there, still get different, and play Xander. And that's the thing at the top. It just usually goes by projections. And when people can afford the most expensive guy, it's a hand builder thing. It's an optimizer thing in some cases, depending on the rules set up and all of that, where it's like, if I have the ability, someone will literally land with 10-5 where it lands on Xander and be like, perfect. But also somebody will land and be like, oh, I love Cantlay, and be like 10-1 and be like, yeah, $400 left, got to spend it. Boom. That's why people are broke and have, mortgage payments missed and cars that they're financed out the ass on. Like, it's just, if you can spend it, you can spend it. And that's what ends up happening. So I do think Xander gets a little more love than we see now. I have two more, though, quick thoughts. One is we put two guys on the cover. So it's surrounding both of those. If people are going the route of the Gerard thing this week, I feel like it could be on Cameron Young. So I do feel like the difference is like Xander or Young. I think Oberg obviously dropped out of last week with the illness. By the way, did he not crush the South Course here last year in round 1 and then have an illness and then like play badly and try and stick around? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I think it was the other way around. I think he crushed the North. Could be wrong.
The reason I say that, because if anyone doesn't, I'm sure they know by now, or anyone watching this should know, but like the South Course is harder than the North. Yeah. But I thought that was what was so crazy about it, is like he definitely crushed day 1. I know that. I just, for some reason, felt like it was on the South. And people were like, holy shit, he's really going to crush it this week. But wait, no, he's not. He's going to be sick. But anyway, either way, he dropped out.
I think he also started well on day 2 on the South and then kind of got sick.
Maybe
maybe you thought differently last year. I kind of thought that whole thing was overblown, that people were kind of excusing his next like month of poor play as him just being sick from that time. And I kind of thought, his game was inconsistent. He had a very clear hole in his game around the green play that was really holding him back. And I think we kind of saw that throughout the whole season. So look, maybe I was wrong about that. And maybe his long-term forecast, or his all his projections and numbers from last year are actually, deflated by that illness. But yeah, I'm still at the point where with Oberg, I want to wait and actually see, the player that we all know he can be before I start treating him like that, which I think a lot of the field is already doing.
Well, now I'm tripping out. Like what happened here last year? I got to go back and see this. Something's not adding up. Farmers Insurance Open for last year.
It was when Potgieter was in contention, I believe.
Yeah, but
and remember, we also then had the Genesis played here as well.
Is that what it was?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what it was. I'm trying to see. So last year, the winner was. How come
it was English?
Harris, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's why I was like, something didn't add up. And I was like, okay, that's what English, English, Stevens, Novak, my boy Sungjae. Sorry about the injury he's got right now, but probably saving me some cash in the DFS streets. But yeah, so I was trying to see that, because I was like, what is going on here with the Ludwig stuff? Because last year was 2 different events, I think, starred, right? Like the back-to-back events. Did Ludwig come back and win?
Yes, he then won the Genesis, which was also played here.
That's what it was. That's what I was like, so that's what was messing me up. So anyway, there's that, but going back to my points now, and Cantlay just gets left alone for the $100 less. I think people just go to Young or go all the way up to Xander, or even drop into the 9Ks, which we'll get to shortly. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was the Brooks factor. I know people said like, oh, Brooks is going to get played because, people haven't got to play him for so long. I just don't believe any ownership number I see on him, because people don't care. Nobody cares that, I didn't get to play a live guy, Brooks cap. Like, no one's thinking anything about this. It's cool that he came back. It's his first event back. All that's great. The way DFS works does not usually work around that. So I'll be shocked if Brooks is like high, like mid double digits or something that some people are projecting like 12 to 15. I don't see that personally, but maybe I could be wrong. I just think people are so much more likely to even go to Hogard below, Adam Scott above, Jake Knapp for sure. Anybody there, in my opinion. So I don't know if you have any extra thoughts you want to add, but that's just some of the other thoughts I had beyond your Xander point.
No, I think you're right. And I think it kind of leads into the next point about like what the quote unquote chalk build is this week, which is it's really hard to identify a chalk build because we have a more spread out ownership this week. And it's not that we have like very few chalky plays. We actually have a bunch, but because there are so many popular plays, so many guys that people like really are drawn to, it's just kind of keeping them all in check a little bit. So like we've got, Cam Young, Siwoo, Spawn, Hideki, Goddard, McNeely, Pendrith, Gerard, Knapp, Rasmus, Stevens, Thorbjornsen, Higo, Nikolai, and Pearson Cootie, like all 14 to 25%, something like that. So there are just so many guys that people are going to be drawn to. And to your point, that means it's going to be hard for Koepka to get much higher than the 8% that we haven't projected for. And another point there is like, it's not like he's been playing well around the world. He has 2 good starts in a row, but prior to that, it was kind of struggle city outside of his was it Open Championship or U.S. Open? No, U.S. Open performance back at Oakmont. He was good, but even the Open Championship, he was then cut from. So I don't think people have enough reason yet to play Brooks. On the other hand, if he plays well this week, he will be popular next week when he goes to a course that he's played so well at in the past, and then has the hype of, oh, he's back and he's playing well type thing. So then he'll be really chunky.
And don't forget, this is leverage lane, but a huge narrative street next week is the last time when the Seahawks and the Patriots were in the Super Bowl. Brooks Koepka won that Waste Management Phoenix Open. I think it was like I think it was him and JT or something. Like JT clipped a tree and then Brooks ended up getting away with it or something. Like that's how it ended up shaking. I think that was it. Maybe I'm wrong again, but people know I have a bad memory. But anyway, that was and I'm getting older, so that adds up. But I think one thing you said there, I definitely don't envy you, anyone at Ship It Nation, basically anybody that does ownership this week, because no matter what we can kind of figure out about those quick thoughts that we had, that doesn't make a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever your range is on all these guys any easier to get correct. Because when you go to certain ranges here, just to finish out your thoughts, but like, I think Day, Spawn, and Decky and Gotterup, those would be like, oh, that's the 4. The others get pushed down. But how much did those guys go up and how much did the others get pushed down? This week, Higo could be like Hoey, where people think he's going to be played, but then I think people just land on Thor or your guy, one of the other Hogards, Nikolai. Like he looks good too. And he's starting to get a little bit of steam right now, is from what I'm seeing. Pearson Cootie, Patrick Rogers. It sounds weird, but true. Like some of these guys are where I see it going. And then if you go down again, like, I guess the big thing for me then, just to, because we're going to get to how to leverage the chalk build in a minute. I don't know. Do you have anything you want to add more to the chalk build? To me, to wrap up the chalk build, if I'm saying my final piece on it, it is 7,200 and up. And it's going to be multiple guys in that mid 7s for sure. And then however you want to wrap it up, you can say it's Xander a 9K and land there, Xander a couple 8Ks and land there, or you could say it's fading the 10Ks and going 3 9Ks and going there. But to me, that's what the chalk build is. It's just not fully clear on exactly who it will be, but there's pretty good idea. The problem is there's a ton of like 2v2s and 3v3s and all of that. That's, I was definitely going to bring that up today. That's certainly a thing that happens in these spots. You'll say, I know so-and-so is going to play this in the high stakes. You could be correct, or you could be a 3v3 away. And that doesn't necessarily fully matter until it does, but I'm just noting, it just shows that the 6Ks will be unowned. The low 7s will be pretty low owned. Even our favorites, which I was going to get to, but I'll finish it now. Meisner, McGreevy, not our favorite, like field favorites, and sweethearts, if you will, or whatever. They just can't get the ownership right now as it stands. Like they can get to 5, 6 or something, but I don't know if they can get much higher than that at least. Yeah,
I agree with that. And I'd also say, I should have mentioned Patrick Rogers in that kind of list of guys who will be chalky too, but worth noting, every single price range is covered this week, right? We've got Rogers at 72, Cootie at 74, Højgaard at 75. There isn't a break in price range where they're going to be chalky guys like we had last week, where it was like everyone from 78 to 92 was going to be pretty low owned, and that certainly played out. So it's a lot harder to find a contrarian construction this week. You actually have to get contrarian by playing contrarian players.
Elaborate on that, because I think that's one of the things people. So let me ask you this way, and then I'll let you. I want you to elaborate on that, but I also wanted to ask this, so it kind of puts two and two together. Is this a week when the ownership can be bunched like it is, that it can just be some formulation of saying, okay, I'm committed to these 3 to 4 guys that I like, because it's not really like chalk. Something is eventually chalk, but it's like, this is where it gets confusing for people, because like, oh, if he's 18%, he's chalk. Well, is he, or is it what's around him? And certain spots like the Gerard one last week can also work out. So I think that's all what runs through people's mind. All to say, if you really like 3 guys at 15 to 20%, you can play them. It's just, do you play 6 guys at 15 to 20%, or do you look for some of those lower owned guys below? So I'll let you elaborate on your point, and then maybe just take it a step further with just roster construction thoughts before we get to how to leverage the chalk build with those exact examples.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you looked at ownership last week, you saw like a bunch of chalk was bunched between, let's say, like 91 and 10-1 or whatever it was, right? There were 4 or 5 guys, Henley, Ben Griffin, guys like that, who are very clearly going to be very chalky and were very clearly the start of one type of lineup. And then you had obviously Scotty up top. And then, as we mentioned, there was like a big break in ownership between all the 8,000s, maybe like 9,000, 9,100, whatever, and then 78, 7,900. So we knew we were going to see a bunch of lineups that were Scotty and then 6s and 7s. We knew we were going to see a bunch of lineups that were 2 or 3 9K guys and then 6 and 7s. And you could just say, okay, I don't even need to worry about like finding pivots off the chalk. I can just go to a different style of lineup. I can just go play my favorite 8K players. I don't have to worry about their ownership. I can just go play my favorites, knowing I'm in a contrarian of construction that I don't have to worry about, differentiating and finding my separators that way because I'm already so unique just in the construction of my lineup. This week, there isn't a way you can do that. Every single price range, every single construction is going to have chalky options with basically every single roster spot. So to get contrarian, you actually have to think about, okay, who are the pivots that I really like? Who are the low-owned guys I like? And not just, I can go take my favorite player from this range. Every single range is chalk that you have to worry about and find pivots from.
And that's where that's exactly it. I think that's people. So if someone really likes Cantlay and wants to start there, but then they classify Cantlay as a 15% owned guy, it's like, yeah, but there's 20 to 25% owned guys around him. He's already a unique starting point. So just that alone already gives you some leeway to break it down from there. So I think that's really important to remember. If you're already in on 3 9K guys and you're like, it sucks. I just watched Leverage Lane and they told me people are actually going to start with Day, Decky, and Goddard up. Well, sit back and think for a second. Your 3 guys are Siwoo, Keegan Bradley, and Harris English. You're playing it completely different. So it's like you could actually go there and then get away with a lot because now you're not using a 10K guy, not using, say, 2 to 3 of the highest owned 9K guys. It doesn't mean you necessarily need to go completely off the board when you get to the 7s because you're already starting a different way and with different options. Again, not who you play, how you play them. That's where the thought process comes together. So if you're not just using an optimizer, building, trusting the projections, ownership, and the rules, etc., that you're getting, then it really does come down to like, if you know what you like, especially for what we're talking about here with like single entry, typically hand building it out, don't think you have to go completely off the board just because. I think what a lot of people do is they go, oh, Hideki's popular, I'll go to Keegan. Oh, Mav McNeely's popular, I'll go to, I don't know, Alex Noren. Oh, I go down the board again, Rasmus is popular, let me put in Penge or Rye, who's right there. They just keep going to the one-off pivot in every single spot when you can definitely get different by construction, like you said, or also with some of the plays within the construction that already allow you to, then you can just tidy it up at the bottom because you're already so different at the top or vice versa of at the bottom versus the top. So I think that's just another thing I'd want to look at. So moving on, how do you want to look to leverage the chalk build this week? What's your thought process from everything you just said? You can tie it back to that, but what's sort of your starting point or your first guiding principle?
It's literally just looking for guys who I think are under-owned. So at the top, like we mentioned the fact that I think Cam Young could end up steaming like crazy. So very tentatively saying I think he's under-owned because as of right now, I've got him like in the same range as Oberg and Cantlay. I think Cam is clearly the better play of the 3. Day is going to be under-owned. Keegan, Harris English are going to be under-owned. I'm still hesitant on Zalatoris, but I very much understand anyone who wants to take a stab at him. We saw some signs last week, and when he's right, he's a very good fit for this course because he can just ball strike it to death. And then Wyndham, Noren, Homa, McCarty, Justin Rose, like there are just so many guys here this week that I think fit the golf course well. They play difficult courses well, and are very clearly going to be pretty low owned because of how many popular guys are around them. So it's just a week where I'm probably going to have 6 contrarian guys in my lineup and feel pretty good about that because I don't think I'm losing much in terms of like probability of success from my guys going to these contrarian options. And obviously the chance for separation just skyrockets when you are getting that type of play at 8% instead of 18%. So definitely going to be a very contrarian lineup for me this week.
Okay, I got my lane. I'm going to save it for later, so that's good. But I could go into a whole rant on it right now, but I'm actually going to save it for the end because it's going to be my lane, and you kind of said some things there, and it's all going to tie together. But one thing that somebody brought up is like just play 2 6K guys. This is important to remember. Again, doesn't mean we'll be right on this. And look, there is, I don't know what they do such a poor job of this, by the way, when it's like the weeks like this where they just jam like 90 guys in the 6Ks. Last week was totally different. We said like there was tons of 6K options. The challenge to it, as I brought up earlier, is if you get Scotty right, it's like, did you get because there was the 50 plus options from 6.5 to 7,500. Let's just use that range. You're not always going to land on them, even if you are being contrarian, so on and so forth. But one thing I'll note here is if the 6K range is being ignored, but it's being ignored because it's pretty bad or not even close to required, that while you'll be naturally contrarian by playing 2 6K guys, you are almost bucketing yourself into what I just talked about, which can be bad, because now you're saying like, well, you will be unique. Well, you will have the potential. If there's, unless there's like 2 guys you have super high conviction on, then sure, you'll already be different enough. Now you can kind of round it out however you want, to be honest, from there. But it's saying if the reason the 6K is being ignored is because it's not needed and also is pretty bad, it's probably pretty bad. As like that part matters more to me. So it's like, do I really need to go there? Or if it's only really one guy, we talked about earlier with Pot Guider. Okay, there's going to be some good Pot Guider lineups that you can build. But if it's just Pot Guider I'm definitely not thinking about Xander, because we talk about this all the time, the combination that you mentioned. How many Pot Guider, how often do you think it's Xander with Pot Guider? Because the minute they go Pot Guider, they can fit Xander. So it doesn't mean it can't work. If it gets there at the end in the finish line, that's what you needed. It's what you needed. But we're just noting it. Those are the types of things you should be thinking about more than, is Pot Guider a good play or is Xander a good play? For where they are on the board, they both look like amazing plays. Once you put them together, it also allows you to only have 4 spots remaining, and you can back yourself into a corner pretty quickly. You could also find ways around it up the middle. I'm just saying that's a note that I would make. So one thing for me is I just think like the lower 7s, and this is not going to be my lane, but the lower 7s and upper 7s don't really have the ownership going to them as much. Like you said, okay, if it's good, I know it is, by the way, it's early, but it's going to be Sam Stevens. He just did a good job last week. So people just naturally go, why wouldn't they go to him? But like McCarty, if he's 1/3 the ownership, I literally don't care about anything else. I don't care who played what, when, where. I would just look at it and say, okay, I'd be interested. But there's other guys there too. I'm just noting it. I think from 77 to 78, like that little range, and even 79, maybe Rasmus. But like Rasmus would be a good example here because we'll see how his number stays. But if everyone's going to be if I think there's steam on Thor and Nikolai Hogard down below, and I think people are definitely playing Sam Stevens, why not play Rasmus Hogard, the brother, who's just as capable for $300 more and a $100 pivot point off Sam Stevens? Obviously, you can play a bunch of them together, but just little things like that I would look at that to me just make tons of sense. People are going to talk about Rasmus. I just don't know if they can click him as much as they click Sam Stevens, Thor, Nikolai, Cootie, all those guys down below. So that'd be my first thought, is upper 7s, lower 7s versus the middle.
Are you as surprised as I am that it doesn't look like McCarty's going to get much love this week? Because played well in the summer, played very well in the fall, was awesome last week, especially with his irons. Why is he not getting more love?
I think it's a product of the spot on the board. Like we've talked about this a ton in the past, but from last week alone should be fine. But I think like when you see the board again, and this could be one of those flips that we see, we'll have to keep an eye on this stuff. So I don't envy anyone doing ownership this week, but from projections, you're going to see Rasmus, Stevens, Higo, Thor, Hogard, all that stuff just beats him. So it's like, well, then how can people land there at 70? And they paid they paid less for him last week. So it's like, oh, he went up in price too. So I don't know. For me, it's just the way it looks right now, but it's hard to say exactly who's going to steam and moonwalk in this range between all of those guys I just mentioned.
Yeah, very much agree. And yeah, so I think it sets up as a really fun week because I think we just have full license to be super contrarian because we're going to get very good players in good spots here at low ownership just because of simply how many guys are. It's an awesome field, and it should just be a lot of fun this week, and hopefully we always say that, and it's like there's still a chance that our lineup does poorly, and when our lineup does poorly, it's not as fun. But what I mean is it sets up as a week where I think we can very confidently get a pretty strong edge this week, and the golf should be of pretty high quality. So fun all around in that way.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good event no matter what. Like that's the whole point, because you have such a good field. You have the great course, courses to start and the course over the weekend. Like it's always a really good event. And this one's loaded up. I will say, like, that's another thing too, though. So you just brought up a point there that I was going to just elaborate on, was when you don't know until you know, like you kind of the point of what we talked about with, like, okay, is it going to be McCarty actually staying low versus Sam Stevens? It really does feel like that right now. And that's why. And obviously Sam Stevens, there's a lot of overreaction to the week before. And sometimes it's different courses. It's different things. Again, trying to make this evergreen. Sometimes it's about course history in the past. Sometimes it's about the weather or whatever it might be. Like sometimes there's an overreaction to certain things. And I know, like, you guys have all your tools. With our tool that we have, the Stone, I'm just going to bring this up for 2 seconds because this is not on here now. But one of the columns we add, if anybody hasn't seen it, this is for this week. It's just a rough draft, so you're not getting too much out of it, but you'll see it's the names, the ownership, the projections, the round 1 and round 2 tee time, the wave that they're in. I think I had the old version up. The updated version has the course rotation right on there. So if you're looking at that, but one of the things that we add when we get out of the rough draft, Alex, is the optimal percentage. And I know you guys run a ton of stuff like this as well over at FTN for the Sims and being able to see sort of how things shape up. We add a column that is like the optimal, and then you're looking at it versus the ownership. And you end up seeing it in some cases where, like, Sam Stevens might be 12% of the time to be optimal, and then he's coming in at like 20% ownership. Can that beat you still? Yes, it can. I mean, that obviously he can get there. It's golf. But I think just some of that stuff, a lot of the overreaction, especially earlier in the season, that adds to guys, quote unquote, like over-owned, if you will, is because of just the recent form, right? It's like, what did they do last week? Got to be the same this week. It's sometimes the same way in football. You've seen, well, last week a team passed all over this team. Well, it's a different scheme. It's a different setup. It's a different thing. There's a different slate. There's so many different factors that I don't think people spend enough time looking at that. And that's where the game can be that's where the edge can be found. It doesn't mean you'll land on it, but if you go in approaching it the way we do, and we're talking about as a puzzle and finding our angle and our lane, that's where I think it's just, you can get different naturally in some cases. Do you have anything extra to add just on sort of looking at the contest sims and applying it here? I know you do a ton of stuff with that in your Discord as well.
I'm going to touch on some similar stuff in my lane, so I'll leave it there.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about when it comes to the board and just like some of the pivot options and going through it? Like, do you want to do the ranges quick, or do you want to go, where do you want to go from here?
I think I'm pretty much ready to move to the betting stuff.
Okay.
If you are, I don't think there's a ton to add. I think we've already touched on a lot of guys. I know we're both going to touch on more in our lanes. And I think we've done a pretty good job of kind of laying out what the challenge of this slate is and how to attack it. Yeah.
And that's good. I just don't know if you had any other pivot plays or anything you want to talk about, because I can tell you right now, my lane is not going to be any golfer specifically. It's going to be a lane that I'm playing this week in single entry. Do you have anything else you want to add for those guys? If not, I mean, it'll come up right now. Anyway, we're going to talk through one and done and the betting breakdown anyway. Maybe let's start with the betting breakdown and go through that. And if there's something that sort of gleams out of that, I'll be able to just elaborate from there.
Yeah, there are a couple more guys, but I'll be able to incorporate them into my lane. My lane's going to be very similar to yours in the sense that it's going to be more of a concept than specific players, but I'll mention some players there. So yeah, as far as the betting goes this week, I will say I'm pretty disappointed in the underdog product so far this season for PGA, where we're not seeing anywhere near as many options as we've seen in previous seasons. Now, last year we had a very similar start to the season. It was like once NFL ended, even though there's no NFL competition this week, once the NFL season ended, we started to see some better options. We saw more tournament finishing position options. We saw like front 9 score, back 9 score. We saw score on the 13th and 14th holes or the 16th hole, things of that nature, which were really, really fun. And particularly when you're watching like wind direction and things like that, you can find some serious edges. As of this point, we don't have many. I don't want to force anything by saying, hey, I like this for underdog this week, when I really don't. Chances are I'm not going to have any underdog plays, at least going into this week. We'll see if they add throughout the week. But it is, I think, a very good week for outrights. I've got 3. I think my favorite one is probably, I think it's Justin Rose. Justin Rose at 55 to 1, 60 to 1, somewhere in that range within each way. And you guys are going to hear me talk about this kind of all season. I mentioned it a bunch last week, but personally, I think that when we think about what makes a guy a good outright bet, there are obviously two factors at hand. There's how good is this player? How well does he project this week? But then there's also how volatile is this player? When he plays his 90th percentile game, his 95th percentile game, does he have what it takes to actually win that event, or does he need the 99th percentile outcome? And one of the ways that we measure that is at FTN, we do a lot of predictive analysis, predicting players event to event standard deviation. And Rose at 1.42 strokes game per round is actually the highest in this field. When he's got it, he's got it. His ball striking is there. He's driving it well. And then he can really take advantage of the fact that when he's on, he's one of, if not the best putters in the world. He's not as consistent as some of the other best putters in the world, like Denny McCarthy or Sam Burns. But when he's making putts, man, he makes them from everywhere. And when you pair that with him actually driving the ball well, which he did quite a bit towards the end of last season, it can really be explosive. We saw him go 9 under in the second round this past week. So we know what he's capable of when he's playing really well. And we've got him at 2.8% to win, largely because of how volatile he is. He's, projection-wise, he's right in line with a guy like Sam Stevens that we have literally at 1.4%. So only half as likely to win as Justin Rose, even though they are projected for pretty much the same median outcome. It shows just how powerful these volatility estimates are. And that's why I think at 55 or 60 to 1, whatever the best number is that you can get on him now, he's a really good value for that outright at 2.8% to win.
I like it. Yeah. And I think we can tie that into sort of the one and done segment too. Like, you did a really good job last week of talking about it from a perspective. So we'll go back to it, but like the Fowlers, the Siwoo Kims, it's not even about just the result. It was more to me, the concepts and the game theory and the thought process going in on why those guys versus, some of the others. Like, someone got Scotty Scheffler last week. Congrats to you. Probably not a worse way. Everyone will hate on this. Like, oh, what do you mean? You got to win. Like, he's Scotty Scheffler. He's By the way, and if there was, any doubt in the room around this stuff, nothing to do with the DFS side of it, but like, if Scotty's doing that there, his full advantage is on a 4-day tournament where it's like the field just can't do that kind of stuff. If he's winning by 4 and 5 strokes, like what do you make, a bogey or a double near the end or something like that he could have been even better. If he's sort of embarrassing that type of field where everybody can go low and they were sort of keeping pace for a little while and do that there, then it's pretty crazy what he should be able to do as it carries on. And nothing has really affected this guy. Like realistically, if you look, his mental game has only got stronger and better. If you remember back in the day of, the stuff with Ted Scott even saying, like, I don't even want to be on his bag if he's going to be like that. Like he was definitely more of a maniac for Scotty. People that don't follow it heavily are probably, what? Scotty's the nicest guy, like goes to church, all that. He was a bit more of a hothead back then. There was even conversations around him and his caddy and stuff that way, just on the side note. And then he's got, his wife, his life is balanced, the kid now, like everything has happened that can kind of happen. He can have another kid and probably will, but it doesn't seem to phase him in any way, shape, or form. He's not going to put on 30 pounds or lose 30 pounds and affect his swing. Like everything is completely dialed for Scotty. And that's one of the big things that I think just people need to remember. So from a one and done perspective, you can probably apply a lot of those same thoughts. Would you have different thoughts here that you'd be thinking of, or anything else extra you could bring to add?
No, I saw someone say that at this rate, Ted Scott's going to be able to use the same all-time moneyless exemption that Vijay Singh used to get into actual events, which made me laugh. But yeah, I agree. I think an important point to recognize or look back on this past week, there wasn't a single guy that you could have used in the one and done that you are going to want to use at some other point this year that you would feel glad that you had just used, because Scotty won. We know even if you had Scotty last week, wasn't good, because he's almost certainly going to win or at least make more than that in one of the signature events or major championships moving forward. So you're better off without Scotty. And a second place finish outside of a signature event is like a 5th or a 6th place finish in one of the signature events. So you got to feel like you can find a 6th or a 4th or 3rd, let alone a win in a signature event from anyone else that you would have wanted at some other point this season. So yeah, it's really tough when it's set up like that. But I think we kind of nailed the setup there where the fact that Scotty was playing just made it really, really difficult to take anyone of any real value. I think we can use some better players this week, but there are also a lot of guys in this field that there's a very good chance that they're going to either be one of your preferred targets as a low-owned option in the signature event later this season, or they're going to find themselves as, one of the like 3 or 5 very clearly best players in a weaker field that's not a signature event, like the 3M Open or at Detroit, something like that, where you're just going to wish that you had saved them. So it's another tough week where like we're in the third week of one and done, and I still kind of feel like you don't want to burn anyone of great value. Now, Pat has made the really good point. Like, you only get to use, 31 golfers this season. So like, you don't need to ever use the 50th best guy or the 40th best guy. But it's also still worth noting, like, I don't want to use somebody that I'm really going to regret to have used 2 months from now. So I do have some names kind of as guys that I'm really interested in. And part of that is guys who play really well on difficult courses, because when they are the 3 or 5 best players in the field later on the season, chances are they're playing an easier golf course. So guys like Harris English, Alex Noren, those are the first that come to my mind.
Yeah, I'll add one just because right, wrong, or indifferent. That's just how I feel about it. But I might try and just catch the Will Zalatoris train right now. Mm-hmm. Like he's had a decent week last week. He's got to get, I think he needs the top 10 to, again, I'm the one that always fights against this. That's not why I'm picking him. I'm just noting the guy literally feels like he could get injured again at any time. Let's try and catch him on the up and up. I'm not going to wait around and save Will Zalatoris. Like you said, you only need X amount of golfers for the season, depending on the pool that you're in, 30, 37, 34, whatever one you joined. It's like you're not going to need 50 golfers. So I think he'd be somewhat interesting. The chat was talking about like the McNeelys, the Naps. It's like that might be more of the Alex side of things, where it's like you said, those guys could actually pop up in a field. Like McNeely feels like he could definitely get a field where he's like the 3rd best golfer by odds or something like that. It's like, I don't know that I would do that here, but you will definitely get him lower owned here because of that, if that's how you're feeling. And you're not saving him, in my opinion, for like a signature event or something, obviously. So to me, it's like, yeah, I get that side of it. Nap. I guess, what about going right back to Gotterup after he already got he can't win twice, maybe, but people said that about Gotterup. What wasn't it Gotterup when he won the Scottish Open and then the next week came 3rd or something? It's like or vice versa, one of the two. Like it definitely could do something like that.
Yeah, I think he's going to be popular. I don't think he's a good play. And the reason is your ceiling, if you use him this week, is that he does as well as the guys who have already used him and won. I think you want to use him when there's a chance that he actually outperforms those guys who are now ahead of you, who got him for that win. So I will not be using Gotterup this week. And part of that too, by the way, is like, there's a chance that he's already one of the 10 best players in the world now, and that we really, really, really are going to want him for one of the signature events or one of the majors. And we're going to really regret to have burned him on a lesser purse event. So I feel pretty strongly about not using Gotterup this week. But yeah, and so like I love this Zalatoris call because, like Noren in English, he's one of those guys who we now have a pretty long track record of. He's going to spike more often on difficult courses, which makes the fact that he just spiked on really easy courses like even more impressive and even more of an encouraging sign. So yeah, I think the Zalatoris call, Noren, English, that type of players is who I'm really going for. And the type of player that I don't want is like still like a Wyndham Clark type guy who, if he plays really well this week, if he shows that he's back to the really good version of Wyndham Clark, then again, we're going to want him in a signature event, not one of these fields. So that's just the way that I'm continuing to kind of look at this. Honestly, the same applies to Brooks Koepka, right? Like if Brooks wins this week, if he's Brooks all the time and not just in major championships now, then we're going to want him in one of those bigger events. So it's less exciting to think of it this way because we're like I said, we're in the 3rd week and we're still saying like, don't use guys that you're super excited about their chance to go win the tournament this week. But I think you will thank yourself if you approach it this way once again this week, once we get to those bigger events, both in terms of the majors and the signature events where the purse is high, but then also later in the season when you're at Craig Ranch or Detroit or one of those events, and like there are 3 good players in the entire field. It's Knapp, it's McNeely, and those guys. And it's like, oh, now I can use them when they don't have to beat Xander, Ober, Cantlay, Cam Young, Day, Siwoo, Spawn. All of these guys, they just have to beat each other, and you're going to see me a lot happier that way.
Yeah, I can't find if I could find it, I'd just read it verbatim. I wish I could, but crazy. Like, yeah, like it's everyone thinks you need. Yeah, it'd be nice to get a winner every week. Of course, that'd be amazing. But it was like it was brought up from like the big splash one last year. I think the winner ended up having 6 wins on the season, which obviously is insane. But and people don't recognize how important that is. But like people are acting like you can pick it up here and there. Your point on the Goddard one is like you want to pick up Goddard when he's not popular, can beat the ceiling of those that had him at the number, and he really could be that good, like we saw. And it could be at an event where he's the 20th highest owned and one and done because everyone's on the Xanders, the Obergs, the et cetera, the et cetera. And it's like, there's no way Goddard could come out and win it. And then he does, or he scores bigger money for second place than at a signature or something than it would be if he was to win the event early on in the season and it's at 2% or 1% ownership or something. So love that call out as well. think that's really solid. Let's go to our lane. I'm going to start
before we do that. We should pick which of the 3 guys we kind of narrowed it down to for our joint entry.
Yeah, I'm high on Zal, so that would be my thought. But if you have something different on that, I just, like I said, for me, does he continue what he did from last week? I don't know, but if he can or does, I think it's fine, and I like that option. I'm not actually super high on him overall. Just to me, it was for one and done. My thought process is like I do want to use him. I haven't seen much, but I saw enough last week. If he can continue that to this week, if he can play it out, and then I always worry about the guy. Like he is, he's had injury issues. It is what it is. Call it like you see it. It's like I'm never counting for that. It's like we don't play for backup running backs in football because like, oh, what if there's an injury? It's not that. It's just golf's a little bit different, and he has been a bit fickle that way. So, talking to my man Alex Blickle, play the man that's fickle. Willie Zalatoris. Let's go with it.
Yeah, I like it. I'm good with Zalatoris. We can go there. I really think like the 3 best options are pretty clear to me. That's Noren, English, Zalatoris, because I'm with you on Zalatoris. Like I don't think I'm going to want him at another point this season. I'm very confident I'm not going to want Noren or English at another point this season because they are both like lower. They're not low volatility guys, but they play a lot better on difficult golf courses because they have a very extreme skill set, which is avoiding bogeys much more so than they're good at making birdies on easier courses. So they're always going to have a better chance of separating on these really difficult golf courses. We don't see those very often in weaker fields. So you just like, they're not the kind of player that I feel like I'm going to want later on in the season. And Zalatoris fits the same box, if you will, as those guys. So I like all 3 of them, and I'll probably, I've got 3 entries, and one of them is our joint entry now. So I'll probably just do one of each and make the Zalatoris one our joint entry. That's
perfect. I think pretty solid last week. Like I said, again, those are like the other things too. You got to pick up those top 10s, top 20 scores in any type of event. Those add up. That's where the money just comes from. You need the winners though. So it's like when you get your 5 to 6 winners, if you can pick up 10 top 20s and 5 top 10s and all that's where it can really start racking up to give yourself an opportunity. But you need those wins, and you want to have them. No secret here, but you want to have them on the big weeks, right? You want those signature events and those major wins. So perfect. Yeah, love that call. Let's go with Zal. As far as my lane goes, I said I would save it to the end because it's more of a concept than that, but I think it's pretty clear to me this week. And again, I'll play both of these. I'll also play, more options and stuff. But for my single entry, what you will see when it finalizes out is I'm going to play 6 guys that go north-south. And the reason I'm doing that is I don't think there's much weather on the south, for the week. I mean, like, so it's like usually you're like, oh, play the harder course on the harder day and all that stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Or the harder course on the easier day so it doesn't affect it. I kind of want guys that can score early on the north, do well on day 2, and then ride that momentum into the back-to-back rounds they have to play on the weekend. The other thing about that is this is a concept piece that people don't talk about enough, I think, but just of note is if you look at it going back to sorry, man. Here, just going back to the stone for a second, south, like all the guys at the top. So one thing is, it doesn't mean it's good, bad, or the ugly. It's just noting that when you are using the one way to naturally get different when you already have bunched up ownership. This goes back to the other side of it. When you have naturally bunched up ownership, you also have pretty bunched up win equity. It's not like a Scotty week where we have, Xander might be 5% up top or something like that. It's not going to be like 35% or whatever Scotty was coming in at last week. So that's fine too. But when I see the bunched up ownership, I know that a lot of it is just going to naturally land with 1 to 2 guys on the opposite course. They can easily still get there, but a way just to get naturally different while still playing good options across the board, even if they end up all being 10% owned. They could all be 10%. I could have a 60% combined ownership and they're all just equally at 10%. It could happen. I'm just saying if that was to happen, not many people are going to have that setup or combination across the board because it's basically it's a correlated lineup, right? Based in golf, based on the starting course that they're on, but it's you're still using different pieces than in different combinations than what we talked about before. Like a Patrick Rogers, I don't even know what course he starts on, but it just an example is if people are playing Patrick Rogers and then going to Xander in most cases, or Potgieter and then going to Xander, I would also kind of want to flip that too. If you're playing a South course lineup, maybe I'd want to have those guys, but then have the rest all be on the South just to get me naturally different from that perspective. So from a concept perspective, it doesn't make it easier. It's not about their mindset or anything. That's just, it could happen. And I would want that, but it is going to get me a different lineup as a whole. And so that's kind of how I'm looking at it for this week. Well, what's your thoughts and where are you going with yours?
Yeah, no issue with that whatsoever. Mine is going to be, I mentioned earlier that like I'm almost certainly going to use a lineup where I have 6 contrarian guys this week. Maybe it'll be 5 contrarian guys, but I want to be a little bit more specific than that with my lane. And so what I'm going to say is I'm going to try to avoid a lot of the 7K range. And I'll just give kind of like a quick explanation for why this is. Let's say that I really liked Brooks Koepka. I'm just going to use Koepka as an example here. If I want to be right about Koepka, I can't just be right that Koepka plays well. I also have to be right that all the chalk around him doesn't play better than he plays. So I have to be right about Jake Knapp underperforming and Rasmus Højgaard underperforming and Sam Stevens, Thor Bjornsson, Higo, Højgaard, and Pearson Coody all underperforming, right? It's a very long, extensive bet to say that Brooks Koepka is the best play in that range if I'm just using Brooks Koepka from that range. Whereas if I go down and I play a Matt Wallace or Johnny Kiefer or Jesper Svensson, who's he's going to be like 1% or less, than I think is actually a really good course fit, then I don't necessarily need them to beat all of those guys because I can run into the situation where I have a combination of like 2 or 3 guys up top that do really well and could not possibly be combined with that upper 7 or low 8K range. I had to go cheaper with that remaining spot. So I'm going to try to build some lineups that take advantage of that lower the number of guys that I need to be right about for the lineup as a whole to really succeed. So kind of avoiding the super, super chalky condensed ranges that are just so diluted with popular players that it's going to be hard to get the absolute best play from that region. And maybe you just skip that as a whole and find a different construction that way. Yeah,
I think that's going to be the key too. You know, the other thing is too, for me, just noting that Cam Young up to Xander are all starting on the South. So I know I can tell you that's the next part too, is like, it doesn't naturally just mean I go to Jason Day to start my lineup. I think that's another big mistake people make where like, oh, pretty easy. Tambo just told me he's going to do this and then do this, but because he's not playing those 4, he must be playing Jason Day. It's not even close. So it's just little things. Doesn't mean you're not going to start there, but I'm not saying it couldn't be a lineup with him. There can be. I'm saying for what I'm explaining, that's not what it means. Like, that's not the concept here at all. It's saying, whereas most people will land down. So now, for example, I don't love necessarily Patrick Rogers at high ownership this week, but he starts on the North course. So many Patrick, how many times is Patrick Rogers not going to be with? I'm going to ask it a different way. At least one of Xander, Ludwig, Cantlay, Young, Siwoo, Spawn, English, like all those guys can fit into it, and it automatically changes the game for what my lineup sets up like. So that whereas I can get around it, and that's where, again, not who you play, it's how you play them. That can be a way that you get around it as well. So I like that. Keep an eye on the weather. That's going to be part of it as well. Some of the tee times, later tee times, the heat, the actual temperature that it is outside, all that type of stuff matters. Showdown, really good week for Showdown. We're obviously targeting the North. Not many will go the other way. If you want to try and pick a diamond in the rough on the South, go for it. But like, you can kind of avoid that, get around it the other way, and get different there too. So I think it's a good week for Showdown. I think it's a really good slate overall. I think it's an excellent event, bar none, nothing else. You've got nothing else going on Sunday. You'll have your round 4 stuff. There is no football this week. It's going to be a great event to watch, I believe. So any final thoughts from you, Alex? If not, you can let the people know where they can find you and anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here.
Yeah, I will touch on one more thing. And since people enjoyed like the little bit of a mathematical breakdown last week on Scotty. I'll give one more this week. I probably won't be able to do this sort of thing every single week, but if the people continue to like it, I'll keep providing it. It's a bit of a window into just kind of the logic behind saying I'm going to have a fully contrarian lineup this week. Let's take someone like Patrick Rogers, $7,200. Even for us, he projects really well. He's one of the best projected values in that low $7,000 range. Let's look at his top 5, top 10 in missed cut odds. He has a 6% chance in our simulations for a top 5, 12% chance of a top 10, and a 35% chance of a missed cut. If you want him to really help you get a takedown, not just be a solid play, but be the guy that you need in that price range, you're probably going to need a top 10 finish. So 12% chance of really helping you get a takedown, 35% chance of a missed cut, literally about 3 times more likely to fail as chalk than he is to help you get a takedown. That's the sort of thing we see in PGA DFS. It's different than when Christian McCaffrey is super popular or Chris Sale is super popular as a pitcher, where their odds of success clearly are higher than their odds of failure. With PGA guys, especially as you go down the board, basically anyone other than Rory or Scotty, you're always going to see this, that they're actually more likely to fail than they are to really help you get a takedown just because of how many guys are in the field. So it just makes more sense in PGA DFS than in other sports to have fully contrarian lineups. And it's also then confounded by the fact that you only have to be right about 6 guys instead of 9 in PGA DFS. So I think anyone moving from NFL DFS to PGA DFS, when you're so accustomed to feeling okay, I need to have at least 1 or 2 or 3 super chalky pieces, otherwise I'm just going to get beaten by all the chalk. It's not quite the same in PGA DFS. You can be more aggressive and you can be a lot of successful.
Yeah, I want to ask you too. I want to do a leave a comment contest moving forward. I'll give away a free week to PGA DFS over at Ship It Nation. We can park that into it or something, just because obviously if you guys are watching this, we appreciate it. What do you think the comment should be? Do you want it to be the winner? Do you want it to be the, what your lane is? I want to make sure you do hit the thumbs up. I did realize this too, by the way. If you're on a iPhone at least, and I don't know who's not, but I'm not. I think Alex, you have an Android?
I do.
Might be my only friend that I can make fun of here that has an Android, because I turned everyone else over to the other side. But it has read receipts now and stuff, so it makes it a little bit easier. But just noting it, if you're on that, the chat that pops up, I've realized this too. If people hit the heart button instead of the thumbs up, you have to actually hit the X on the chat for a second. It'll come right back, but you hit the X, hit the thumb, and then let the pop-up go back. Everyone's using it on mobile. So if you haven't hit the thumbs up, do that for us now. We appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And then when this ends, we're watching it live right now anyway, so you can't miss out on this, but we'll do a week per week. I'll start to add this in so I can give away a free week. What do you want people to leave a comment about, though? I meant to ask you this before the show, but I was coming in hot today.
I think we should do best strategy question, and then we'll pick the winner by actually answering the question the next week. So that. It can be just a general DFS strategy, or it could be hey, I felt this way about using Scotty this week. Here's why I felt that way. Do you agree, or something like that, right? So anything of that nature, because that's the type of thing that we're trying to do with the show anyway.
Thought-provoking question or comment. If it's if it was your thought process that you want to lay out. And I'm not saying you got to write a novel. I'm certainly not expecting that or wanting that. I do like that call out, because one of the things about the comments, I like to go back and try and answer them or respond to them or help people as much as I can, but can't do it all. So if you and I can sort of pinpoint one and say, wow, what is this? Let's actually talk about this on the next one. We're able just to bring that right up on the next event. So yeah, I love that. Another thing too, got to always think about our guy, DGen. Rest in peace to our man, DGen, the big guy in the sky. Monday, our man over at Ship It Nation says, the mustache talk, we talked about already, the elf in the room, it's gone, reminded me of one of my favorite DGen's notes for Minwoo. And over on the site, Alex, we still have all of DGen's notes that he had on golfers. And if you can see here on this page, the stone, if you scroll, that's why I was on the actual one. Anyway, I'm going to do it a different way. If you go here, if you're on the site and you're a member, I'll bring it up in a second, but you can just go under PGA, DGen's notes, and DGen's scorecards still have on. They're included for everybody. I type in Min right away, Minwoo Lee pops up. And then if I go down, what do I got to do here for this to make it work? Here we go. Drives it like his mustache, left and right, but not down the middle. So Gotta love that for one of the notes there. Just thinking about some of the others. Brooks Koepka, there in the mixed, has live and learn tattoo across his chest. He was making fun of him, obviously, when he went to live. But yeah, I mean, all kinds of good stuff over at Ship It Nation. I know you guys got a ton at FTN, as well as what you got going on your Discord. Maybe let the people know a little bit about that, and then we'll hop out.
Yeah, just find me at Alex Blickle 1 on Twitter. You can get all the FTN stuff and all my Discord information through there. So just find that and use promo code LEVERAGE for my Discord. I believe it's 10% off forever. So that's still active from the NFL season.
100%. Yeah, definitely check that out. I'm in that Discord. I think it's awesome. And being a part of that is a lot of fun. We've got a ton going on over at Ship It Nation. My man Matthew did a one-on-one with him last week from the Mastermind Project. So if you're in on the Mastermind Project, you want to check that out. He said, treat yourself. Maximizing DFS is fun. I heard it today on a nice podcast. The guy said, hey, if you want to be a scratch golfer, first thing you should do is try and get out with some scratch golfers. That might be helpful to you. Get into a community, find people like yourself that want to learn, get better. That's what Ship It Nation is. It's FTN, Mastermind, all those things that we offer. Putting it together is obviously the best. That's why we love doing this show so much. But if you guys want to check out Ship It Nation, the early bird special is still on. If you go to Join the Nation, you can get in for just $19, getting Saber Sim and the Discord for 5 full days. You can check that out. The single sport deals are over there with PGA, up to and including our partnership with Rick Rungood, where you can get in for $549 for the year, including all of our stuff, all Saber Sim stuff for golf, and Rick Rungood's tools. So check it out. Appreciate all the birthday wishes. Thank you guys so much for watching. No outro on this one, Alex, because I broke my computer coming in hot late. But thank you for joining us. For Alex and for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.